All right, guys, our fundraising events worth it in 2026. Very exciting topic for today. Let's start today's session with a show of hands, either real or virtual, and be honest because this is a safe space. How many of you raise your hand if you absolutely love a fundraiser event fundraising? Who wakes up in the morning and thinks that is the tippity top of my list? Isn't that why y'all are here today? You love a fundraiser event? Come on, guys, everyone, show of hands. I'm not actually seeing a single one. I saw a thumbs down. Yeah, you know what? If you're like most of us in the philanthropy and development space, most of us don't genuinely enjoy putting on a fundraiser event, right? Usually we are the ones trying to navigate our way out of an event that's maybe suggested by our new boss or that really enthusiastic new volunteer because maybe they just don't know anything else, right? Oftentimes people want to help and we have to help them channel their energies in the right places. But because fundraiser events are so common, that's usually the first thing a new volunteer will suggest, right? Today's presentation is intended to help us weigh the costs, gain some insight into our own operations, and build some talking points that maybe, just maybe, can help us convince our leadership to focus on the most important philanthropic development activity. Spoiler alert, might not be that next gala or golf tournament someone suggested. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jenna to tell you a little bit more about the financial side.
Thank you so much, Marty. And thanks to all of you for being boldly and bravely honest this morning. We are not ornery people on the Pride Philanthropy team. We like events, they have a place and they have a purpose. It is not always the best option for your fundraising needs. So, if we're going to evaluate the worth or value of a particular stream of fundraising, I felt like we needed to really understand the cost per dollar raised. Traditionally, AFP data is used to sort of assess this topic, but it has not been consistently updated. And so I dug a little deeper. I really wanted to look at post COVID, how we know that has affected our events. We know digital advances, modern fundraising data really shows a much wider variation in the cost per dollar raised. What you're seeing from this initial chart is really that maturity matters more than the channel you're using for your fundraising. So if you are a mature nonprofit organization, if you have a mature fundraising program, if you have a well-built pipeline, if you have processes and systems in place, your cost per dollar raised is probably going to be a little bit lower than a newer, younger organization. You're a little scrappier. You're still building your donor base. You're still building those new relationships and you're launching programs that are shaping the impact stories that you can tell as an organization. So, when you're in a growth investment period, you are likely going to be spending a little bit more. For the amount of return that you're going to see on that fundraising investment, right? So there's not a clear cut straight answer, but as we think about where is our organization in its lifespan, where is our database in its development, right? How big is our development team? Am I the executive director, chief fundraising officer, kitchen cook, cleaner, driver? Or do I have a full development shop so that we can really divide up our portfolios and attack our work strategically and with some specialization in those areas? Before anyone really starts to panic, though, I entered the nonprofit sector as a full time, real grown up staffer back in 2007. In nearly 20 years in the field, I have only worked for one nonprofit that consistently, annually assessed and calculated and publicly reported on our cost per dollar raised. It was not a fancy, savvy algorithm. I'll tell you, it was like our operating budget for the development department divided by the dollars raised, right? There was not a fancy system to figuring this out, but only one organization in my entire time as a frontline fundraiser. So if you're not calculating this, if you have no idea what your cost per dollar raised is, don't panic, don't worry. We can figure it out. And we can also figure out how you use that information in conversation with your leadership. Trish, let's go on to the next slide. So, as we are thinking about the different streams, the different channels that we might use to fundraise, we start to look again. Maturity is going to matter. So, our overall average for cost per dollar raised, and again, this is using AFP data and then lots of other more updated modern sources. Um, we know that major gifts, again, our favorite activity in the Pride team, is really always going to be your cheapest return on investment. Having meaningful conversations with the right people at the right time is going to afford us the opportunity to make a bigger ask, to make more asks more quickly, and to get to our mission growth goals that we have as an organization. Grants and foundations can certainly be um, I'd say, cost effective method. It is typically a little bit lower if you have an in house grant writer. Um, Especially if it is an in house grant writer with experience. It costs a little bit more if you are outsourcing your grant writing work. Obviously, direct mail, it's the old school, basic, classic fundraising model, still a place for it, in my opinion. But it is costing us more every day. Postage rates are ridiculous. I think they've like quadrupled since I started working in the nonprofit sector. Postage, printing, the response rates have certainly decreased. And that means that we are seeing a higher and higher cost for direct mail. It doesn't mean you need to rule it out. It means you need to find the right segmented pieces and the right portion of your pipeline to use that targeted appeal approach. Planned giving. You guys, this is a really long game approach. It is something that we encourage organizations to implement and to work toward and to always be talking about with your donor base. It is a wildly volatile fundraising stream, and it can be a saving surprise for an organization. It can be a slow process. Again, we hope the gifts that you're booking for your planned gift program come to fruition many, many, many years down the road. But it is hard to count on those dollars, right? Um, let's talk about how the older AFP numbers were very campaign centric. The modern data that we're looking at and how we're evaluating these cost per dollar raised are really more donor value centric. And so the ranges may have gotten a little bit higher than expected. The modern assessment really acknowledges that organizations in more of a startup or a growth phase, again, are investing more. They are spending a little bit more money up front and are going to have a higher cost per dollar raised. So thank you, Trish, for forwarding. On this chart, you start to see the cost of our special events. We see that there is a higher range here. Special events are tricky because I don't know that we always count the true cost. We don't always see our organizations measuring those unseen expenses. Are you calculating, truly calculating the staff time invested in event planning? Are you calculating the administrative hours that go into your event? Are you thinking about the time that you are trading, spending on event logistics that your fundraising team or your executive director could be in a one-on-one cultivation conversation or having a really high-level relationship move with a strategic major gift prospect? Are you thinking about the hidden costs of burnout? of your staff, of your executive director, even of your board and your volunteers. Fundraising events can zap energy, they can zap morale, and they can easily become a distraction from the other, oftentimes more impactful work of our organizations. I also want you to think about the sort of hidden losses when a board member decides that donating an item to the silent auction is going to replace their cash support this annual year, right? How do we navigate those conversations? How do we calculate the loss of revenue when our board chooses to purchase an event ticket instead of making an unrestricted operating support gift, or not committing to your campaign this year because they purchased a table at the gala, right? So we want to consider the costs, and we want to be really, really transparent about the hidden expenses that we are not necessarily seeing a line item for. Let me kick it to Jake to talk a little bit more about the sign of success.
All right. So, in looking at cost per dollar raised, or a CPDR, we do want to ask, is this the end all be all metric, especially for events? It's like, well, we have to score ourselves somehow. Is this the number that we should be looking at? So, the way that we want to think about this metaphorically is we can't harvest crops without planting new seeds. So people will look at the event in a silo and say, well, on that night we spent $27,000 and we raised $46,000. Therefore, it was a success. Therefore, we should keep doing it forever because this is money generating for us. As opposed to thinking about it as, no, this is our lead capture mechanism. This is the thing that we do to get people to know about what we do, or it's a thing that allows major donors to talk to other major donors. And it's very difficult to then calculate the true both costs and the true outcomes of an event. So though this is a good way to look at it in a silo, people look at the cost per dollar raised, especially for the event itself, or it comes up easy in a board meeting. You can report this easily, and your board members who are totally well intentioned look at it and go, I don't know why we would ever stop doing this. Like, this is clearly a win for us. I have to do barely any work. I just show up. And the fundraising staff who spent 3 months planning for it is like, well, I did have to do a lot of work and it's exhausting. And I'm trying to do my job of fundraising, but I've become this event planner instead, which is even more draining. And like, we don't even talk about the opportunity cost of, like, had I spent those 48 hours straight, spread over whatever amount of time instead on major gifts, what the opportunity cost difference would be. So we want to think of instead about any event as that planting the new seeds and building off from there. So if instead of looking at dollars in, dollars out, which is probably going to be incorrect anyways, even if you calculate it to the T, going through the process of saying, okay, how many people are new at the event? How many people do we have who are first time interacting with us? How many people came to the event last year and then have come again? How many people upgraded their gift as a result of being at the event? There's all these little tiny metrics, and if you want a list of other things, we can talk through that, or you can reach out to us after this. But we look at all of the human capture that we have as opposed to just dollars. So our goal isn't necessarily growth. It's just avoiding that kind of minimal expense. It's like, well, if we get money in and money out and that looks correctly, that's what we evaluate in a silo. And that's not the big picture with events. So you want to ask yourself, does my event, or insert channel here, crowdfunding, grant cycle that we're going through, where we hired a grant writer and they're doing this and this, drive mission growth, or is it just filling the time and helping us break even? Because it's like, okay, well, say it is the case that you spent $27,000 on the event itself and the catering and the venue and the entertainment and all the other stuff that goes along with it, and you did raise $46,000 and you netted some amount of money. Then throw in the staff hours at their hourly, throw in the CEO's time if they're spending any time, or the executive director's time. Then on top of that, if your cost per raising a dollar for major gifts is 100x, subtract that number from the event too, and you quickly realize, like, ooh, we actually are super in the negative if you look at the opportunity cost. The other metaphor that I try to give is, like, say you're trying to get into the lemonade business and you squeezing lemonades by hand, or lemonades, squeezing lemons by hand and pouring the sugar in and stirring it, and you're trying to optimize how fast you squeeze the lemons. And it's like, well, realistically, if I just bought a machine to do this, it would work much better. But if you evaluate the cost of buying the machine and selling lemonade for 1 day, it looks like a loss, where it's like, no, you're kind of investing in this mission growth thing, this thing that's going to project you into the future. It's the same thing with these longer term relationships, longer term major gift fundraising. Like, yes, we didn't raise $400,000 on that night, but four people who came to that event that we then put intentional stewardship time into later each gave $100,000. So do you count those $400,000 for the event? It's like maybe, maybe not. Just really important that you don't look at it in a silo, and that the cost per dollar raise is not the only metric. Totally fine to evaluate that. It's a good thing to report out. It maybe helps you decide which events to cancel or not. A lot of the organizations that we started working with might have had 5 or 6 events when we first started, and we've kind of whittled them down to 1 or 2. This is a way to kind of evaluate, well, that one barely makes any money, so we can at least eliminate that one, or we can go every other year on it. But as much as we can, looking at, does this support the growth of our fundraising program from a relationship building standpoint? Or are we just saying, well, dollars in, dollars out was good, so we're moving forward? All right, next slide. So, whether you believe this or not, often the trick is convincing your leadership or convincing your board. And this is the question that you can bring up to your leadership team, or the people who make the decision of, yes, event's good, or yes, event needs to be canceled. Is, are we being efficient? Meaning, are we trying to minimize costs, but then also potentially minimizing revenue on the other side? Or are we being short-sighted and saying we're taking the short win, and that is preventing us from having the bandwidth to do the long-term thing that is actually correct? So here's what it might look like and what it may indicate, just to give you kind of a framework here. Say we have very low fundraising cost. The venue was donated. One of our donors did the catering for us. It only took us, 20 hours to plan. And it's like, well, we're kind of just relying on our existing loyal donors, the people who love your organization anyways. And they're just like, yeah, whatever you need, I'll come to your event. If that's what if you don't need me to give a big gift, I just need to show up at an event and bid on your auction item, I will do that. Not because they need the auction item thing. They are certainly capable of purchasing that thing themselves, especially if they're wealthy. But they're like, this is what the organization asked me to do. So I'm going to be a good sport and I'm going to do it. And you really rely on them. It's like, well, we raised $17,000. Yeah, but it was those 6 people who were going to give you a gift anyways. And if you just sat down with them and had lunch and talked about their best gift and the kind of impact they could have, you would have gotten $46,000 or $117,000. And you don't have to even put on the event in the first place. If you have few new donors, meaning even if people attend, your like total volume of donors that go into your CRM, your pipeline might actually be shrinking overall, and you're not feeding that engine of like, here are the new people that we're trying to make sure that we're paying attention to, that we're stewarding along, that after they give their first gift, we're interacting with them just as much as we were trying to do when we were cultivating them. If the staff is mostly processing gifts and not cultivating relationships, it's like, we did it. We had 119 new donors, and you spend then 2 weeks in the CRM trying to get all the tax forms out and getting it all done. It's like, well, yes, we raised some money, but now there's all this back end work right after the event when you're so tired from having to work all week and then all weekend and then back into the next week, and you're right into data entry mode. It's like, that's not productive, and it's certainly difficult. Predictable revenue, saying, well, we know we're going to get $40,000 every single year from this, so we're going to do it. It's like, well, you should be increasing it every year. And if it's looking flat, that is actually limiting your growth because you're not opening up channels that can increase that from 40 to 50 to 70. If you have high short-term efficiency, often that is at the expense of long-term sustainability. And if you have a high one-time donor count and you're not making some sort of intentional follow-up, one of the things we always say with events, if you're going to do them within the 2 weeks following the event, every single person who attends your event should get a personal phone call and invitation to sit down and ask for some sort of a contribution or to learn more or to something. We kind of look and say, well, we got them here in the room. Let's see how much money we can squeeze out of them in these 3.5 hours or this 1.5 hour. And once they leave, we're like, missed it. We'll get them again next year. It's like, no, if you're going to get 100 people in the room, spend the day not trying to do auctions and get money here and put the envelope in the table. Those things are fine. We can include those at our events. But more importantly, can I capture contact information? Can I share about the things that we're going to be doing next? And can I let people know in the room, hey, we're going to follow up with you. We've got some amazing opportunities coming up in terms of what you can support and the different options you have and the different ways you can do it. We'd love to sit down with each of you privately about what you might want to do to partner with us. And then the real work begins on the other side of the event, where you spend that next 60 to 90 days actually talking to people one at a time. So I'm going to turn it over to Michaela to show you how to use your events as sort of your acquisition tool?
Thank you, Jake. Yes. So if you've been listening to today's session and thinking, oh, pride, but I do have an event on my calendar and it's not going away in the next couple of months, that's what this session or this portion of the session, excuse me, is really all about. Okay. So is our event really worth it? And when we're talking about a fundraising event, it's often something like your annual gala, like Jenna mentioned, or maybe it's a golf tournament or like a 5K. We've got some questions we'd like you all to kind of look in the mirror and consider. Does your event distinguish itself against the other nonprofit organizations in your area? Think about if you're hosting a golf tournament and you removed all the signage. Do your attendees realize who's hosting the event or what the funds actually are going towards, what the outcome is, or what the impact is? That's a great opportunity for you to step in. If you're like, I'm not quite sure everyone does, let's make some adjustments to your work plan to make sure that your attendees know what it is that they're supporting or making possible, especially if they're new to your organization. Does your event genuinely highlight your mission? Is there a way that you can tell the story and vision of your organization clearly at some of these events? Next slide, please, Trish. So as we go into kind of the consideration of how we might optimize our event that is absolutely on the calendar, we're going to make one assumption that you are going back to your board or your executive director and you're having a realistic conversation about your cost per dollar, about your investment strategy, and trying to move your fundraising activity. So that's already going to happen. Now we're going to talk through the logistics of how do we genuinely, use these events, not only focused on that net positive, but thinking through how do we acquire a new donor base or build stronger relationships with those that are a little curious about our organization. The first thing, Jake already touched on this, but I'm going to reiterate. Capture attendee contact information, please, before the event, during the event. Sometimes people are like, well, I don't know who's going to show up. Can you put like a little raffle table at the entryway? Get some email addresses, get some phone numbers, collect that information, make it fun, get creative with how you're going to collect this information. You need to, or you ought to follow up with these folks. Ask your sponsors to share their why at the event. Okay, I'll quick story. I'm a runner. I often run charity 5Ks. Half the time, I don't even know what charity is benefiting. I'm there to run a race, right? And I'm having a good time. I'm like high on the energy. There are 300 people that have showed up. And I just genuinely don't know what my bid purchase is going towards. But if the director of the nonprofit ask their sponsor to come up and say, hey, would you speak for a couple of moments, just a couple minutes while these 300 people are here ready to start this race and so excited? Tell them the why. Why did you sponsor this event? Why is it important? Now I'm a captive audience and I'm like, okay, I could get behind feeding penguins. Like, this is exciting, right? Use the opportunity to not only steward your sponsors, but tell your story, help your guests connect what it is they're there for to your mission. And you've collected my email or address, maybe my postal address, my phone number. So now you're set up to steward me right away. And I would encourage you, unfortunately, I think I can count on one hand how many times I've worked with an organization that has had their thank you email queued before the event was executed. Now you got to go back and update the total dollars raised, how many guests were there, but set yourself up for success. We are all exhausted after an event. So have that thank you email ready to go. Have your preliminary recipient list ready to go so you can just hit send the next day. You want to build on the momentum of an event. If you wait for 2 weeks, that might be like self-care, but people have forgotten about the event at that point, right? Thank them for attending. Let them know the impact that the event had. We fed 500 penguins, and this was, such a great event. We raised more than last year. help me feel a part of the impact. You also, Jake mentioned this one too, ask for an opportunity to meet one-on-one. A golf tournament is a great example of where this is really appropriate. It's a smaller group of people. It's hard to follow up with 300. Maybe you could segment that, but get on the phone, ask them, what did you think about the event? Were you surprised by the presenters or the sponsors? Do you have any questions about what we're doing? I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. We really appreciate you showing up. Use it as a discovery opportunity. And then invite your guests to be next year's sponsor. So let's go back to that 5K example. I got to the start line and I was really excited. I was like, oh, wow, I fed 3 penguins today. Be smart over the next year, 7 touches. You're engaging with me and letting me know, okay, this is the research we're doing with the penguins, and these are their names, and these are the reasons why we have them in this facility, and they can't be in, their natural habitat. So I'm invested in these penguins. I know their names. And then 3 months before that registration comes up again, I get an exclusive invite to the pre-registration that has a portion that says, along with your bib purchase, would you consider an additional donation to feed 2 more penguins? Yes, I absolutely would. There we go. Or perhaps if you can't make it this year, would you consider a gift to help make XYZ possible? Yes, of course I will. That's building your donor pipeline, acquiring new donors through strategic planning. Okay, so if you have an event on your calendar, please do leave knowing that there is opportunity to bring new people into your sphere and get them excited if you're thoughtful about connecting that event to your mission and using it as a stewardship opportunity as well. So with that, let's open it up to discussions or questions or maybe even a discussion about, well, I don't really know how to collect this contact information from our guests. Any questions? All right. Well, we would love to help you optimize all of your operations. But with this, I will turn to Marty, who is going to share a little bit about the upcoming things we've got going on.
Thanks, Michaela. Yeah, feel free if a question comes up as I'm doing this wrap up, feel free to drop it in the chat. We're happy to entertain it. I know sometimes when you're put on the spot right in the moment, it doesn't come to you, but we're happy to answer questions. If you're not already part of the Pride family, we would be happy to have a conversation with you. Just go ahead and scan that QR code. We'd love to see if we can help you further with this or other topics. So feel free to scan that QR code to book a time to talk to one of our team members.